Hello and welcome back to another episode in me learning how to make my first Godot game. In this one we're going to be going through me building and rigging and getting my first character into the game. My first port of call was to just get the ideas for characters that were floating around in my head onto paper in the simplest, sketchiest form possible to see if that would inspire any bigger, more solid ideas. I went onto Google Images, grabbed a bunch of reference images and sort of just got sketching. I started out with gorillas. I figured looking at animals to start with would help me focus on the big picture, broader shapes. But then because the main mechanic of the game is punching, I moved on to boxers. Now what I really liked about boxers was the boxing gloves, and this idea that like the hands could be bigger and more exaggerated, and that will definitely come back later. The next port of call was your sort of muscle-bound superhero. I crossed this over with some deadlifters, so I could focus on this sort of big torso design. And then I can tell I got a little bit bored just looking at big muscly men. So I looked at Stretch Armstrong, the stretchy toy. And it was really fun making a character with sort of noodly arms instead. Last up, I went a bit off the rails looking at Street Fighter Chibi. I'm just trying to focus on blocky shapes. But in this one, I decided to turn my little rough chibi-ish drawing into a classic English football lad. These sketches I then compiled together and grabbed the bits of each one I liked. These big hands, the sort of noodly arms, the big square head, and a tiny body. After I'd assembled all my simple sketches together, I brought it into a new layer and started assembling my first draft character design. I was really taken by the big hands, the big head, big feet, with the tiny body and noodle arms, so that's something I lent into quite a bit. I figured it would be fun to animate those little legs and little arms later. Around this time I realised I'd made a kind of mutant Gordon Ramsay, so I lent into that. I figured that is an excellent, very quintessentially punch yellow car British caricature. It was really good to get all these ideas out onto paper. And I could really start imagining the character in the game, which I'm very excited to then move on to the next step. After I've refined this up a little bit more, we can bring it into Blender and I can start actually beginning to model it. After bringing these pictures into Blender and setting them up as reference images, I started modelling. This began with a head. I'm using a cube that I've subdivided to get the rough shape of the head, and using the front and profile to get the shape as I've wanted. Then the body, which is just another cube with a neck sticking out and some holes for the arms. You'll notice that I'm building my model in different sections. So the head, the body, the arms, hands, legs and feet are all separate models that are all going to be parented to the same skeleton. I'm doing this because eventually I'd like to be able to add character customization, and I know that the best way to do that is to start with good practices and have everything be separate so it can be turned on and off, and I can have extra things parented to the armatures as I go and design them. That is out of scope for the alpha, but it is something I'm definitely going to be investigating as it comes to the beta or further builds of the game. You can see here I'm working on the hand. I have so much trouble with the hand. There we go, I'm starting over fresh there. These hands were a little bit absurd, to be honest. I think in a redesign I'd probably make them... I love that they're this big, but make them maybe 75% the size, just because you'll see when it comes to animating them, they are nightmarish. I still stuck with them and I still stand by them. I've heard that one of the signs of good character design is being able to identify a character from a silhouette, and they are distinctive and fun, and I still love them, even if they are a little bit nightmare fuel. Now that I'd got my character fully skinned, it was time to move on to the rigging. I started off with a Rigify rig. It's a free plugin for Blender that makes rigging so incredibly easy. It was really fun playing around with my rigged model, and for making animations I really don't think anything's going to beat it. However, I'm not looking to make my own animations at this point. This isn't going to be an animation video. Already sketching, modelling and rigging was at about my capacity. So I'm going to be using animations from the Mixamo library. And when I brought them in and tried retargeting, I ended up with stretching and warping. And so I started again. I rigged up my character using a skeleton that I got from Mixamo. And that made retargeting so much easier because it was a one-to-one mapping. In future, I am going to go back and rigify. I think when I'm looking to build my own animations, there's nothing that's going to be better. But for now, this worked just fine. If you're interested, or just for a note, I am using the Rococo plugin for retargeting. This means that I could download all of the animations that I wanted and just have them pasted over onto the skeleton that I've already built. It's particularly useful because my rig looks a little bit weird with the massive wiggly fingers, the big head and the very small body, but being able to just copy it over and retarget it and have the animations work perfectly first time was ridiculously useful. So I'm very glad that I had that plugin. Now I'm just doing a little bit of texturing on the character so that they look better when I bring them into the game. I have a remappable skin texture, and I just thought I'd give them the classic vest and booty shorts. So at this point that I was ready to export and bring them into Godot, and I spent 2 days, 2 full days, trying to work out why the animations weren't exporting with the model. I looked through Blender, through Godot, through the GLB file specifications. Yeah. In hindsight, all the tutorials I looked at, they told me to turn off apply modifiers, because if you apply your modifiers, you scrap the armatures, you get rid of all the poses, and I should have noticed. It was a very silly mistake. But it really was tough. After those 2 days, I did find it incredibly demotivating. And look, I love what I'm doing here. Making this game, it's the thing I look forward to most when I come back from work. It is so much fun for me. And sometimes it knocks the wind out of my sails. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. I don't want to pitch this as a sunshine and roses learning experience, as everything's happy. Sometimes it sucks. And that's absolutely fine. And then after I dusted myself off and I'd got myself back up, I was excited again and I was raring to go. And I knew that I had my character ready to go into Godot. So I built them a little scene. This is just thrown together with little CSG boxes and prototype textures. But there's my character. I used the animation tree to work the animations together. I ended up not recording that. I think I was just so excited to be actually making progress again. But I'm sure I will be going back and putting more work into that, because I did a fairly simple tree just to get the animations working and blending together. But there it is. There is my little player in the scene. They walk when they're moving, they can jump, they can fall. The absolute best thing, the goofy little run animation. The first time I saw this, I actually burst out laughing at my computer, and recording the voiceover now, it still gets me. This is why I can't get rid of those massive stupid hands, because it's just perfect. Chef's kiss, no notes. It is so reassuring to see the little player in the game, and I am so excited to bring this all together. with everything else we've built so far. I think if I could restructure my project timeline again, I would start with the character every time. Having a little guy who moves around that feels alive makes this whole project seem so much more real. And by having it in front of me and being able to look down now, I feel like I can do anything. It hasn't escaped me that over the last 4 videos I've been learning a lot every video. This really has just been you watching me learn the basics of game development, and that's really what this series was meant to be. On a certain level too, it's also about learning the basics of video making and publishing to YouTube, and that's what this was meant to be. I hadn't figured quite how much I needed to learn, quite how much I didn't know, but I think sometimes you don't know how much you don't know until you start trying, and it's been fantastic to do that. When it comes time to putting the beta of the game together, so after I've got all of the parts of the alpha bought in, I want to make sure that it's not so much a watch me learn another thing I should have known about making games already, and instead let me take the skills that you've watched me acquire and put them to the use. I'm not saying they'll never be learning again. I will always be learning, but I really want to make sure that I'm not just learning, that I'm also doing. And I'm really thankful for you for being along with me for that experience. The last few weeks have been a little bit heavy on me, and we've been building a lot of tools in isolation. So the next 2 weeks I'm really going to be focusing on bringing everything together. I'm also going to make sure I'm not slipping too much on my upload schedule. I have noticed that I'm releasing a day later or so I'm going to try and bring that back down to a tight 2 weeks each time. Mostly because I think I've been getting a little bit in my own head about making sure I do something spectacular every 2 weeks, rather than treating this as an excuse to just share what my last 2 weeks have been like with you guys. For these little video sections at the end, I didn't include one for my last video, and it felt like it was missing it. I also got a comment on my procedural buildings one, where someone recognised the city that I live in. So, of the very small number of people who watch these videos, which, by the way, I am so immensely grateful, to have someone already notice made me so happy. So this is for you, and I'm going to make sure I keep including these videos, because it's also nice to just have a bit freeform talking. But that will be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Stay safe, and goodbye now.